Hello and welcome in again to another edition of Musings from the Mountains. I am your host / managing editor, can't even say my own title, to WVSports.com, Keenan Cummings. Hello, you know me, you love me. And I'm also joined by a face that everybody's getting familiar with.
Yeah, I would hope so. The beard helps. We're keeping the beard going along. But of course, I'm always Jared Serre, staff writer for WVSports.com.
Yeah, it's definitely it's not just no shave November. I haven't shaved in a while right now. I'm starting to look like Robin Williams out of Jumanji. No animals going crazy though for West Virginia. I think that Mountaineers come off a gigantic win. I thought West Virginia would win that game. I know some people, especially on radio out in Kansas, thought I was a little crazy when I thought West Virginia would win. But I just felt like Kansas State is a little bit unproven. West Virginia was it was a make or break game for that team. They had to find a way to win that game if they wanted to do something this year against a team that really, good football team, but true freshman running back, true freshman quarterback on the road. You got to find a way to win that. And West Virginia did. They didn't just win it; they won it in convincing fashion, 37-10. I think that one thing that West Virginia needs to do here now is you got that big win. What are you going to do next? You got to follow it up. You're only as good as your most recent game, and West Virginia is going to find out a lot about itself on the road at Texas. We know pretty much what we need to know about this team at this point. They're young, they're inconsistent. You're going to get a pretty solid defensive performance week in, week out. Offensively, if you can catch the football, they can move it. This is a different animal. I know Texas 4-2, same record as West Virginia. They're a lot better than their record. Wouldn't you say, Jared?
Yeah, 100%. It all starts with Sam Ehlinger. He's like the Perry Ellis or whoever you want to compare him to. He's been at Texas for about a million years. And he, year after year, he is what makes the team go. He is what makes the Longhorns somewhat successful, I guess you could say. And they have the top scoring offense in the Big 12. He's a big reason why. And West Virginia will have their hands full with that. Joseph Asai, hell of a linebacker. I think he leads the Big 12 in forced fumbles. He's near the top in tackles. This West Virginia team, their biggest issue is consistency. And, we saw they came out and played a terrific game against Kansas State last week. Now we need to see this week if they can be consistent. And it's probably the toughest test they'll have all year against Texas. So, we'll see. It's definitely – I wouldn't be betting any money on this game.
I think this is an interesting game from a lot of perspectives. The bounce attack, obviously, can West Virginia consistently do it. Texas, for as talented as they are, has been a little inconsistent too. West Virginia's defense, number 4 nationally, one of the best defensive units, at least statistically, in the country, is going to be tested. They struggled with tempo on the road at Texas Tech. Well, guess what? Texas is going to tempo you. The flow of the offense has kind of been all over the place a little bit in their games, but they are able to line up, snap the ball, and really what's going to be the test for this West Virginia defense is not necessarily winning the first play. It's the second play within a play, as Coach Adai likes to put it. Ehlinger is going to get out of the pocket. You got to plaster the receivers. You got to be able to contain him. If you don't, it's going to be chunks of yards. The Mountaineers have struggled against him. You remember 2 years ago out in Austin, it was the Will Greer Sam Ehlinger shootout game. So he's had a lot of success, and I think trying to find a way to bottle him up is going to be key because you look at the rest of these Texas players, very talented, don't get me wrong, probably the most top to bottom talented team in the Big 12. That's nothing new. That's almost an annual ordeal for Texas. But the rest of it, there's not really a lot of dynamic guys that really stand out outside of Ehlinger. He triggers that thing and he makes it work. They've got talent, but if you're able to contain him, you're able to kind of keep that offense under wraps. I think that this is going to be the biggest test for the West Virginia defense by far. I don't even think it's a question mark. They've played some good offensive football teams, but, look back at it. They got Oklahoma State with a backup quarterback. That really changed that dynamic there. They've played Texas Tech with a backup quarterback. Changed that dynamic there. I know Texas Tech won the football game, but still, it's going to be interesting to see how West Virginia's defense holds up against Texas's offense. One of the best, if not the best, units in the Big 12. Defensively, You mentioned it, Joseph Asai. You got to found a way to block him. He's that jack position in their defense, that edge rusher, really creates a lot of problems. Last week alone, 3 sacks, he had 12 tackles, a forced fumble. He pretty much did everything you can do at that position, and he's gonna create problems. Texas is good up front. They've got athletic linebackers, athletic safeties. They're susceptible. They'll give up some yards, they'll give up some points, but something they're really good at, and I don't know if you just sometimes you luck into it, sometimes you just have a knack for it. They can create turnovers, and that's something that West Virginia's offense is going to have to avoid. What you say, Jared?
Yeah, 100%. It's something that has always been a bit of a struggle for West Virginia this season. Luckily, we're seeing Jared Dagey kind of develop, get a little better week after week. So I'm not particularly worried about the interceptions, but just overall, West Virginia cannot put the ball on the ground in this game.
What does West Virginia have to do to win this game? I think that's the question that any of you watching this are wondering. What does West Virginia have to do? I think first of all, they got to show up. You got to play better than you have on the road the first 2 appearances. West Virginia basically beat itself against Texas Tech. No disrespect to the Red Raiders, but that game was in hand to hang on to the football. You couldn't get out of your own way on the road at Oklahoma State. Defensively, in those 2 games, West Virginia, they've misfit some runs, but they don't look like they have the same juice that they play with at home. You got to find a way to manufacture that. You got to be able to play consistent on that side of the ball. I think West Virginia can lose some on offense and win this football game. They cannot consistently lose on defense. The defense has been the backbone for this team. You got to limit those big plays, especially when Ellinger is able to get out of the pocket either with his feet or throwing the football, because he's a guy that's really created some problems. I think that if West Virginia is able to do that, they have a chance. This game opened at, 7 or 10? It's dropped down to 6.5, 6. People like West Virginia. I think it'll be interesting to see, can the Mountaineers put it together. You win this game. If you're West Virginia, you win this game. I'm not ready to throw a parade yet, but you really start talking about possibly being in that Big 12 championship picture with a couple games left. You get TCU at home. They're really struggling. Then you got to try to beat Oklahoma. That's a whole different story and went on the road at Iowa State. But who would have thought after the way they played at Oklahoma State, we'd even be talking about the possibility of that. So if you're West Virginia, I don't want to say there's nothing to lose because there's a lot to lose, but you're not the favorite in this game. A lot of people don't think you're going to go in there and win. I'm interested to see how this team responds because we talk about young team. And yes, it is a young team. I know you're tired of hearing about it, Blue Line, but you go up and down, look at it. It's a young team. You're going to get inconsistencies. The problem is we're 6 games into the season now. It's time to start growing up. You can't use that excuse forever. Let's see how West Virginia fares. You got a prediction for me? How do you think this game is going to turn out?
Honestly, and I'll allude back to what I said last week in a sense of I don't really know because this team just lacks consistency more than anything. Ultimately, though, if I did have to bet on it, I got to give it to Texas in this one. Texas, number 1 scoring offense in the conference. And while West Virginia does counter with the number 1 total defense, I'm a firm believer in offense in the college game. Defense doesn't win championships in the Big 12. Offense does. And Texas has that offense. Joseph Asai is a phenomenal linebacker. He's a lot like Tony Fields in the sense that he makes guys better on that unit. So again, Texas, number 1 scoring offense. And also they have their punter. I can't think of his name. He's Australian. I know that. So that means he must be good. But I believe he's 2nd in average punt yards per game. He's got the most punts of 50-plus yards in the conference. I think that will be a huge factor in this game, the special teams battle. So ultimately, I do have to give the win to Texas in this one.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about special teams. Every year, it seems like Texas they're loaded on special teams. Their coverage units, their kickers, their specialists, everything about them is good in that. I mean, you look at some of the guys they have in the pros right now, just phenomenal special teams players. But I've gone back and forth on this one. I've taken a beating a little bit. I've missed on a few games this year. I've taken West Virginia more than I haven't. So any of you out there listening, you know that's true. I've taken West Virginia a lot. I think only one game I have not taken West Virginia, and that was on the road at Oklahoma State. Can't do it. I can't take West Virginia. I think this game is going to be close, but until I see West Virginia's defense dominate an offense, I believe that has the skill set as a team like Texas does. I can't put stock in them consistently doing it. I'm not comfortable enough yet with the offense. Although I want to clarify here. I do think the arrow is pointing up, and Daigie's playing some of the best football he's played since he's been here. But I'm not quite comfortable enough yet to consistently think that unit's going to go out and win a football game and be mistake-free. And I think that's the difference. Texas maybe gets a turnover or two and pulls out a close win. Could West Virginia win? Absolutely. Would not surprise me in the slightest. I do think that if it's close to a pick 'em to me, I'd give Texas the home field. And I think that's the difference. West Virginia going on the road, it's going to be tough. I know it's a different environment in this COVID-19 landscape, but I think it's just a tall task for West Virginia to go in and get a win. It'll be interesting, though. I think if you win that game, we're going to have a happy recap show, at least from the point of fans yelling at me for being wrong again. They have been kind, though. When I have been wrong, I'll admit I'm wrong. I'm the first person to do that. A lot of people in this industry won't try to sidestep it. I'll own it. But I do think that it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for West Virginia. I like this game. I think it's going to be a back-and-forth game. In the end, Sam Ehlinger gets the ball and makes a play and wins this game. So, but hey, we're talking about football. We didn't think we'd be talking about football at this point. We're talking about West Virginia playing some pretty good football. First win over a ranked team, guys, last week in a while. Really the first time since Kansas State last year they were ranked in the poll. So second under Neil Brown. A pretty impressive win. The program's moving in the right direction. You just got to continue to trust the climb, although as we've seen, there's going to be some times where it's a little bit harder to get up a little bit. So thank you for tuning in again. This has been another edition of Musings for the Mountains.